Albertini from Acceleration, Ana Esqueda and Brian Mills from Google, and Lauren Lavin from GroupM. But before we get into the panel, we wanted to actually inspire you with a real-world example of what could be possible when you effectively harness first-party data and technology. This solution that you're seeing incorporates information that you'll learn today, and we'll come back to this later in the discussion as well. So post-COVID, we had a tech client at Acceleration that was facing supply chain challenges when their customers' expectations for faster shipping, more product availability, and more competitive prices were actually increasing. So naturally, carts were being abandoned, and this would happen when they had long shipping times or when items were out of stock or on back order, as you could probably expect. So our client needed to respond and innovate real fast. So we used their first-party data and we built a custom solution that responds to their inventory, and it predicts in real time when a customer may cancel their order. It then automatically presents alternative relevant product choices, and this all happens without relying on cookies. So we're super glad, obviously, to share that with this approach, and they achieved a 19.4% increase in conversion rate and an 86% decrease in cancellation rate. And obviously now the client is set up for long-term success as well against resiliency, with resiliency against disruption in their industry. And this example uses inventory data, but the panel today will cover many other different data sources that you can use in your marketing efforts. So I hope you're inspired. And now let's welcome our panelists. And I thought we could start with some quick intros. So thanks for being here, Anna, Nick, Anna, Brian, and Lauren.
Hi, nice to meet you. So I'm Nick Albertini, CTO for North America for Acceleration. Anna?
Hello, everyone. My name is Anna. I'm a customer solutions engineer at Google and part of the Google Professional Services team, and I'm supporting partners and agencies on the Google Marketing Platform.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brian Mills, Director of Enterprise AI for Google Cloud, part of our Strategic Pursuits organization focusing on use case, ideation, and execution with many of our clients.
Hi all, I'm Lauren Lavin. I lead commerce for North America across GroupM and our agencies.
Thank you all, and I'm Alex Reid, and I lead our partnership with Google for North America at Acceleration. So let's dig in, let's start the panel. I thought we could begin, by talking to the people that are on the line, our dear marketing friends, and getting to the heart of some of the challenges that they might be facing today so that we can collectively try and, address and solve for them later in the panel. Anna, I want to start with you. As a senior customer engineer working with some of Google's largest agencies and advertising clients, what are some of the things you're hearing from marketers when it comes to challenges that they're facing in adopting first-party data, custom solutions like the ones we saw earlier? What are you hearing?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question, Alex, because as a customer solutions engineer, data solutions are actually a key role in the projects that we develop at Google. And I have had the opportunity to actually be at the intersection of the technology that is being built, but also the marketing perspective. So I have seen firsthand how the challenges are deeply tied to data complexity on one hand, but also the rate of innovation on the other. So we can think of data complexity as data fragmentation, definitely, but also sheer volume. And because when you think about it, there is a lot of information out there, and the marketing teams are literally drowning in data and the countless data sets that they have access to. They manage CRM systems, they manage web analytics, social media platforms, and very often all of this information is living in different systems. And it is very, very common that the data doesn't even speak the same language. So you may have different schemas, you might have different formats, which is very difficult for marketers, for data scientists, for engineers to get the unified view of the customer. So marketers are very strongly struggling on managing all of this information very effectively. And as a result, they are actually focusing more on the data cleanup, the data integration, and they are spending less time on the actual innovation and the actual activation of the data. So that's actually a real challenge. Now, on my second point of the rate of innovation, so I think we should acknowledge that the fast technology disruption cycles are now happening very often, and this is actually the new norm in the industry. So we need to understand that it is very clear that the rate of change and also the continuous learning is higher than ever before. Now, I think AI is actually a very good example of this. So we have a lot of updates almost every week, new models, new technology, new tools, and this is just increasing the knowledge gap, not only for the marketing teams, but also for the technical teams that are supporting them. And maybe when they already master one of the solutions, this might be deprecated, outdated, or maybe even replaced by something new. So I believe like now more than ever, focusing on extensible design for data solutions should be a top priority, but also upskilling and learning should be a more proactive approach for the teams that are actually leveraging all of this new technology.
I love it, Anna. Whenever we present a challenge, you immediately come through with a solution. And I love the idea of leveraging AI, I mean, to solve for some of the, data overwhelm and also some, resource scarcity as well at some of our companies. Thanks. And Brian, I'm curious your take, from a cloud perspective, what are you seeing?
Yeah, seeing a lot. Over about the past 12 to 16 months, we've ran about 35 to 50 workshops, use case ideation workshops, and obviously marketing is a big part of that. And there's a whole laundry list of things that come up obviously in those sessions, but as Anna articulated, there are some reoccurring themes. And a couple that is in every session that I've actually been part of is around data silos. Anna articulated a little around that. The quality and refresh frequency, I think we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later, is really critical in this. If you think about the amount of information and more importantly, the type of information from all different disparate systems coming together to bring these use cases to life, it's pretty complex. And then the second big piece is, and this is especially prevalent in Europe, is around data governance and compliance, if you will. Our friends over the pond are, have to contend with the GDPR type scenarios, if you will, and making sure that not only the compliance is there from whatever solution you're using, whatever frontier or foundational model, but also the inference back and forth to those models with all the other data flowing through the scenarios, if you will. And then finally, obviously, is kind of cost management. All this together, you have the existing infrastructure, providing X, Y, and Z to different solutions today. Now you're adding some additional costs potentially on top of it. So you got to make sure that the business case is actually pretty sound when you're bringing these use cases to life.
Yeah, so it goes from data complexity and silos, and then technology across the business, and then layer on an extra, heaping portion of compliance and regulation from around the world. So thank you, Brian, for that perspective. Lauren, your world is sort of shopper expectations and helping brands meet those expectations in your role in commerce. Curious your take. What are you seeing from your side?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest pressures that commerce marketers are facing is really just as simple as knowing what to do with the data that they have available to them. And so from a media perspective, as investment dollars are increasingly going into digital media, and there's a proliferation, right, of channels and partners within that digital media space. It's not just search and display anymore. It's digital out of home, it's connected TV. It's creating this enormous amount of data. And not only from a marketing and media performance perspective, but also just on consumer behavior and how consumers are shopping, what their preferences are. And the challenge, I will say it for now the third time, I'm repeating Brian and Anna, but it's all in disparate data sources, right? So from a media perspective, it lives in many different places, and then the metrics across the board can be different. And if they are the same, the math behind them is probably different from how we got to those metrics. So if all this data that you want to try to get in one place, then you need to normalize it, and then you need to get insights from it. And so it can become a very overwhelming situation. And there's a level of data paralysis, right, that happens across organizations, especially if the business doesn't have the planning or the resources to sort of manage through that. And so that becomes a real challenge. And I think even if you overcome, right, the housing of it, the maintenance of all of that data, you have a new challenge, which is really driven by the fact that all companies operate in some level of internal silos. So the efficiency and the coordination of delivering data to the appropriate people and then having them optimize whatever the work product is against that, and then showing measurable improvement for your business becomes a complex organizational effort.
I feel like if I could hear our audience right now, I would hear heart palpitations because you guys are raising my heart rate with all of these complexities. Yeah, the struggle is real on that one. But I did hear a common theme sort of among all of you, and it's around helping marketers identify the data that they can use, right? Like it's overwhelming. There's a surplus of data, it's all there, but what can they actually use to drive advanced marketing? And obviously too much, but we've got signal loss, we've got cookies deprecating, and so it's a time where marketers need to use all of the available signals and first party data that they have. And I think that among our industries, a lot of it becomes looking at what might be non-marketing data, or things that we would traditionally consider non-marketing data. And you guys all talked about this as well, but organizations are complex, and so it's not just about finding the right first party data that they can use, but then knowing where to find it and how they can use it. Nick, I wanted to ask you, just to sort of put it in practical terms, can you share some examples of data sets that marketers, might have access to but might overlook from a non-marketing perspective?
Yeah, of course. I mean, marketers always going to go straight to things like media data, cookie data, and so on, things that are right at hand and easy to use in most cases, especially because the vendors package it up so nicely. But really, you should be looking deeper and digging into things like your CRM data. So really making the power of first-party data working for you. Looking at provider data as well. So in the example that you gave earlier, a provider is Feednomics that provides inventory data. That's still first-party data. That's your data that you have available to use. If we look at another industry, there's pharmacy prescription data, and in a fully anonymized perspective that gives you basically the same thing as what you might get in a retail setting from a first-party data perspective. And then what's really super important that I feel like marketers sometimes overlook is zero-party data. And that's sort of a strange concept and said, well, what is zero-party data? Well, zero-party data is sort of analogous to first-party, but it has a value exchange associated with it. It's things like preferences. It's things like, I want you to treat me in this way. I'd rather you communicate with me in this channel. It's when someone is raising their hand when you ask them, hey, why are you here? Why are you on our website? What can we do for you? And so it really helps with the customer experience and helps to manage that day-to-day interaction with your brand and really gain more trust in your brand as well. First-party data is data we've been talking about for years and years that everyone has access to. It's your cookies, it's your transaction data. But I think that zero-party data, especially in light of the introduction of artificial intelligence to a lot of what we're doing in media, is really important because it can make sense out of all of that huge amount of information that you are capturing.
The industry talk more and more about zero-party data. I'm really glad that you called attention to it today, Nick. Thanks. And Anna and Lauren, same question over to you two. Same thing. Like, what are you seeing marketers use that's working? First-party, non-traditional marketing data. Maybe we can start with Anna.
Yeah, sure, Alex. Yeah, so I've seen marketers use very effectively trends data, also call center data, sentiment from social media. And I would like to deep dive a little bit more on the trends data first, because that's actually becoming quite popular when you are integrating also with AI solutions. So when you think about the trends data, this is something that you don't actually get necessarily from the traditional marketing channels. And sometimes the access to this information might be a little bit limited. But the marketers are actually finding new ways to leverage public trends that are easily accessible in platforms like BigQuery, for example. And they are using this data to uncover a lot of opportunities for brands that are actually not very obvious, or maybe whose lifespan might be too short to effectively react to it. So, which is something that happens very often with social trending topics. So there is no easy way to know about it, and this can represent for sure a ton of missed opportunities for the brands. So how are marketers actually addressing all of these gaps? So they are using trends data together with AI solutions to be able to identify trending topics that might relate to their brands in a more meaningful way, because they want to optimize how they are reaching to customers, maybe having a better message, maybe having a more targeted approach. And this is also helping them to react better and faster to these new opportunities for the business. So it is very interesting how trends and AI is actually playing a crucial role in all of the solutions that they are developing. Now, on the other side, a very different data set, which is the call center data as well. So this is also maybe some information that might be overlooked by some marketers because they don't know how to connect it, they don't know how to use it exactly. So, but this represents a high opportunity for them to connect what is happening on the online activities for their customers. Let's say visiting the website or maybe creating a submission for the form with what is actually happening on the online transactions for the same customers as well. Because if you think about it, a lot of offline transactions are also happening offline. If you go and get a credit card, for example, you fill out a form and then you close the deal in the bank directly, for example, maybe when you are buying a car as well. So that's a lot of offline interactions that potentially they don't use this data a lot. So this is just a good opportunity for them to integrate it with other systems to better inform actually the attribution and return of the marketing strategies. And just a super quick other example. So they are using offline conversion import using the Google APIs, for example, and together with value-based bidding implementation, so they can start improving metrics like ROAS, conversions, revenue, even within the first days of implementation of this data and integration with this type of solutions.
Yeah,
Thank you, Ana. I appreciate that. Sorry, Lauren, over to you, please.
Yeah, I think for our commerce-enabled clients and brands, so whether they're selling on direct-to-consumer sites or whether they're selling at retailers, they're relatively accustomed, like you mentioned, to the data that's collected from shopping online, from shopping with loyalty cards and stores. I think what's becoming increasingly important to them is two things. One being SKU level profitability, so that as a data input has really helped us determine what we are marketing to consumers. So it's not obviously not smart to sell through units if they're ultimately losing your company money. And even when we think through supporting items that are brands' best sellers, they have often had price compression happen over time. And for us, it's better to focus on innovation that might cost us more to market in the short-term algorithm, but long-term will really help improve margins for their businesses. And the second data unlock in the commerce space really comes from leveraging insights that you can get from data like ratings and reviews and out of stock reports. And those are very helpful for upstream brand teams to make the correct innovation, make it based on consumers' needs that they're self-reporting in those reviews, make it at the right price that's converting, and then being able to fulfill the correct level of demand.
I love the addition of some qualitative data in there, Lauren. Thanks for the perspectives. So these are all really great examples of data marketers might overlook. But when it comes to applying them, I'm thinking it might be beneficial to our audience to sort of anchor these ideas in a more tangible way. Nick, we previewed it earlier in the presentation, but I thought it would be really great to expand on the custom solution that your team built for our tech client at Acceleration. So they used product inventory data, as we talked about, to help them not just overcome some of the supply chain challenges that they were dealing with, but also to deliver a better customer experience, and they also improved their sales. Can you tell us more about this story, Nick, to show some of this thinking in practice?
Yeah, of course, I'd be happy to. It's something I'm really proud of. Our team did an amazing job of brainstorming on what seems to be a very simple business problem, but was actually rather complex. We were in the position of driving a reduction in cancellations. We thought that was a problem. It's post-COVID world. We thought everyone was sitting at home, and if they didn't get the product immediately, they're going to cancel. We thought that was the main problem, but really it ended up that when our data scientists sunk their teeth into the first-party data that the client had available to them, they uncovered a trove of insights. They saw a huge amount of information that otherwise the client didn't know about. So we developed a model that would recommend products that were as likely to sell for the same purpose as what the customer was looking for. For example, and to mask the identity of our client, and I think you just mentioned cars, so I'm glad you did that a second ago, because that's going to be my example. Is let's say I'm shopping for a mid-range sports car. Okay, that's what I drive now, but I've been driving a Mustang GT since 2001. It's a very applicable use case to me. But if I were to click into a display ad that shows Mustang GT and they don't have the features I'm looking for, I'm going to be really disappointed. So instead, I'm going to instead of driving me to a dealership page that has a random Mustang or a Bronco or an F-150 or not another brand, I hope, then instead show me an ad for a vehicle that is ready to be purchased instead. It's in stock and it meets my requirements. Drive me to a dealership page that has something like a Mustang GT with the sports performance package. Upsell, right? Or cross-sell, the same type of product, something that has all the features that I'm looking for. That way I can be delighted. And the reason why I mention this is because it's very important to not offer a product that's going to be low end or way high end compared to what someone is actually intending to buy. So that's essentially what we did. We worked with our clients' inventory data. We modeled the data based on customer preferences and buying habits. We modeled the predicted products that are available and then would be seen as close to the same as the product that was searched for to begin with. And then we changed the creative using DCO, or dynamic creative optimization. And that's how we ended up with the 19.4% increase in conversion rate. The 86% decrease in cancellation rate was just icing on the cake. And that's what we call inventory responsive marketing.
So yeah, it was really about using the first party data to just increase that relevancy, right, Nick? And
exactly.
I heard you say Bronco, so I need to comment on it. You know, I would personally be fine if they drove me to a Bronco page, because that's what I ended up driving.
That's right.
That's great, Nick. I appreciate the detail there. Anna, you were also really close to this work. I mean, as our partner at Google, I was curious if you had anything to add to what Nick shared.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. So yeah, this was a great opportunity to be close to the work with Nick, Brian, and team. And I think, again, standing at the intersection between the technology that was being built, which is the inventory responsive solution, but also the marketing perspective. So that was very, very interesting. And I think this type of solutions that are advanced use cases for customers, but that also heavily rely on data, are just like an amazing opportunity for them, so they can start thinking about how they are using all of the information that they have available and what is the benefit of implementing, integrating all of this data across all the systems. So they can start also focusing on what really matters, which is activating the data, how they use the data, and how they are actually bringing impact for their customers as well. Like in this case with IRM, as you mentioned, so this not only improve the supply chain challenges as well, so this is also increase overall sales and also improve the customer experience. So I think this is super strong, and the value of the data is actually there, and the impact for the customers is actually there. So how we are using that information to overcome all of these challenges. So it's also important to know that these type of solutions will face the challenges that we discussed earlier as well. That's for sure. But I think what is really winning on this solution is the ability to encapsulate the complexity for customers, because this has a way to streamline all the different data sources and to encapsulate what is happening, which is allowing the clients to focus on the impact itself. And I think also tapping into data providers like Google Cloud in collaboration also with Brian's teams, which is using the Cortex framework as well as a reference, as a foundation. I think this just is setting everyone for long-term success, because you will be building on a foundation of a more flexible systems and a more integrating systems that will actually open the opportunity for other capabilities like integrating with Gen AI, maybe having more advanced machine learning models as well. So this is just a great foundation to be able to deploy this type of solutions.
I like the thinking about applying sort of some scalable tech foundations, right, Anna? And obviously GCP is, one of those. Lauren, we've been talking a lot about inventory and that use case around applying it for better outcomes in marketing, but I want to cast the net a little bit wider, across GroupM, from your line of sight. Are you seeing other examples of marketers using first-party data really effectively?
Yeah, I think two good examples that have come up most recently this past year for media specifically. One is around clean room solutions. So everything from commerce historically has really been around, heavily weighted on last click attribution. And so now with some clean room solutions that we have with media partners, our clients can really see what mix is driving and what path to purchase consumers are really taking that's driving the most action and then driving their sales ultimately. And so while we traditionally knew that consumers went through this funnel activity and there were multiple touch points that were needed, before a conversion, we now can prove out which set of touch points are really working the most effectively, and then we can activate against that insight moving forward. I think the second big buzzword that has come up this year with a lot of our commerce clients is specifically around incrementality and how we truly model investment to drive sales lift. And so that task really requires looking at a brand's total POS, looking at their national marketing efforts, and then also looking at their commerce performance. And so GroupM has recently partnered this year with a company called Incremental, and we have seen double-digit percentage growth for clients that are now optimizing their investment dollars based on incrementality and not just really in driving ROAS or media attribution, but truly looking at driving sales lift for their brand.
Awesome. So, we just talked about a few examples actually. So taking an inventory responsive marketing approach, that's really compelling. And Lauren, thank you for the added perspectives on incrementality and clean rooms and some of the new partnerships that GroupM is using. I'm still, and maybe it's just me, but I'm still thinking that this might still be a lot for our audience to take in. So we've talked about data sets, we've talked about use cases. And I think we maybe need to talk about the how a little bit more, so to keep it more practical, that's just who I am. I thought we could just take a step back even further, and talk through the steps that are required to pull off something like this, right? So, marketers are thinking, okay, well, I have some of this data and maybe one of these use cases might be applying to me, but how do I do this? Nick and Brian, curious for your take, how would you recommend marketers get started with something similar to some of the things that we've just been discussing? Nick, maybe we'll start with you and then over to Brian.
Sure. Yeah. To start with, I would say, take stock of what you have, and pun intended. Do you have inventory data? Do you have seasonal trends data in your analytics platform or media platforms? But I think a little bit more importantly, and this is an insight that I had with a great group of customers I got to spend a lunch with. I spent time with them, and the questions became not what data do I have or what technology do I have. The right question was actually, what do I want to do as a business? What are my challenges and what are my needs, and what am I striving to do? So you need to figure out what your businesses wants to accomplish and what your business challenge is. Then get the data in a good place in an accessible environment. Put it in the cloud. Put tech in place that makes the data usable and not just tech for the sake of having tech. You need to make sure that everything ties the data together, and that's the true value. That's the true gold mine that you have behind it. From there, you need to work very intentionally and partner closely with, whether that be in a data lake or a cloud, with not only vendors that you trust, but a great team that understands what you're trying to do. Those pipes that are connected through a various number of solutions, that's sort of like the end product, if you will. But again, make sure you know exactly what you're doing before you start. Otherwise, you're just going to be overwhelmed and have a huge amount of data. That's the limiting factor. It's not data. It's what do I want to do as a business.
No, great points, Nick. And I'll double click into one of the areas. When I mentioned the workshops at the beginning of the webinar here, I've kind of drilled down into two areas, or two initial questions I put on the slide, right? As you mentioned, you need to start with a specific question of what you're trying to solve for. I'm a big fan of Clayton Christensen, and he has the concept of job to be done. And that seemed to really resonate, because sometimes it's not necessarily a question, it's a unit of work that they're trying to actually solve for, to actually execute upon. If you can get down on pencil and paper, not just esoteric, but actually write that down, I think you're off to a really good start, because then you can go, you've got a clean use case, obviously, and then you can go see if you have AI ready data. And obviously most places are not quite equipped with that yet, but that's where some of the conversations are leading today. I guess a couple things on that topic, obviously data quality comes up in this, the accuracy, the completeness, the relevance of the data itself. And the other thing around the kind of the data quality is, and this is kind of a tangent, but make sure you've got the contractual rights to that, right? And what I mean by that is a lot of this data is sitting in all different types of ISV systems, if you will. I've had customers, we went through the whole process of trying to, identify a good use case or job to be done, only to find out that they have to go back and do a little bit of legal work to make sure they actually have access to the data to actually use it for the use case. So a little bit of a tangent there, but I think it's very important. Data diversity, obviously, especially in marketing, making sure the data itself is representing, a broad spectrum, making sure that the bias is not in there, if you will. And, making sure that, there's a balance there. A couple of use cases that I've seen in the field, had one customer from a data perspective, they started, instead of worrying about a use case, they were just going to go after and actually use some of this technology to do data quality cleanup. For example, many places are actually generating descriptions from images using multimodal models. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. But this customer sort of flipped it. They actually wanted to do kind of a cleanup of their data they had today by looking at the object itself and actually populating a table with the attributes that the model actually could determine what was actually part of the image, if you will. And then taking even a step further, taking the whole marketing messaging and actually having it executed in the actual field. I saw a customer actually build an agentic service for kind of a call center, if you will, to actually answer customers' questions that came in through emails without any human intervention. That sort of freed up their actual call center to actually answer real, questions when calls came in about the products, and they actually saw an uplift on some of the sales, because a lot of the normal day-to-day mundane questions that would come in could be actually handled through an agentic service. So a lot of opportunities here to really drive value through the organization through marketing.
I think what I liked you say, what I heard you say that I liked, Brian, was sort of taking that intervention approach. Like, you're testing and learning, as you go, and you're applying some of the use cases, but you can also stop and start and massage out some of the areas as you're progressing too, right?
100%. The one thing I always tell everyone, this is not a spectator sport. You have to get in, get your hands a little dirty, and actually try and fail. I had one CIO tell me that they had a glorious failure, and it was the best thing that they did, because it kind of recentered them, and then they launched on 2 or 3 new opportunities that actually yielded some good results. So it's a good call, Alex.
Yeah, and just I want to go back to one thing I heard you both say, and it's about asking good questions, right, as you get started. And Brian, I'm curious from your side, what makes a great question? Like if I was to draft a question of my data, what would it look like? What would it need to? What are the qualities of a great question?
Yeah, we've seen this has evolved over the last 12 to 16 months, right? And I think what we're sort of talking about here, obviously, is the generative AI area and people going in and asking, the bots questions. So a couple of things on that. One, obviously, the data is very important. Starting maybe with a smaller subset of data. If you have a 50-page PDF and you upload into a system and train off of that, it may be a little bit better to actually maybe double-click down a little bit and actually have a smaller subset of data to kind of go after to start with, right? And I guess what I'm getting at is a more focused prompt, because at the end of the day here, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit more later, is there's new skills for all of us, right? Especially in the marketing space. And you will be spending a little bit of time in some type of a chatbot asking a series of questions, trying to glean insights from your data, whether it's tabular or non-structured type scenarios. And what we've seen is if you start with a little bit smaller subset and actually drill in from there, you can get a very rich response back from many of these models.
Thank you. I appreciate the additional clarity and elaboration there. And we're moving into our final section of our panel today. And, with the remainder of our time, I thought we could discuss the future, So well, the future is now in many cases, but like let's look forward and help our audience prepare for what's coming. And we know that AI is starting to play a role in helping marketers advance more effectively, more efficiently in many areas across their businesses. And companies are at every stage in their development in terms of adoption. Ana, you live and breathe this every day at Google, helping clients, helping agencies, adopt new AI skills, new tools, new solutions that are coming out. From a Google marketing platform perspective, like, what are you seeing really work? Like how are marketers applying AI really effectively? What tools are they using that that you're seeing really win? All of the ideas I think would be really appreciated.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Alex, I think AI is advancing at a very quick pace as well, and this is literally reshaping how industries are reaching now customers. But I think this is also opening a ton of new opportunities for innovation, because marketers are using AI to tackle maybe the same problems, but from a slightly different perspective, because they are adding more innovation, they are creating new solutions that maybe we never thought it was possible in the past, right? And from the Google marketing perspectives, they are actually tackling AI in three different buckets. The first one is measurement and insights. The second is media and personalization. And the third is creative and content. And I would like to deep dive a little bit more on the last one, which is creative and content, because I've been very involved in some of the solutions for creatives at Google, and they are leveraging AI very interestingly as well, because they are using it for like the different parts of the creative life cycle. For example, starting from creative production, from creative insights generation, and also creative testing. So they are partnering with Google to start building solutions around content generation. So they want to create marketing materials that can scale maybe across platforms like Google Ads, using something like PMax, Demand Gen, DV360, Campaign Manager. They also want to have like a very personalized assets for their clients, and they are building customer segmentations using first-party data. They are creating better audiences with these segmentations for all of their campaigns and the campaign strategy as well. On the creative insights part, they are also using AI to analyze large repositories of information assets as well, which is images, text, videos, and they are getting information about the key elements that is actually contributing to the success of the creative. So super interesting use cases, and all of these factors combined are actually contributing to the overall creative strategy from the clients, while also leveraging advanced use cases with AI.
So if I heard you, it was measurement and insights, personalization and optimization, and then that creative area as well. But there's a lot of focus on that creative area right now because of just the relevancy, right? The ability for marketers to respond quickly with a relevant message, with potentially less resources as well. Lauren, from your side at GroupM, what are you seeing? What are some of the really great use cases for AI that are actually working, I think being the key thing here?
Yeah, I think for us as a media company, driving growth through optimizations is probably the most mature use of AI within commerce at GroupM. And so if we think about when we started the conversation and talking about a lot of the data paralysis that can happen, AI has been very useful for us, for our analysts here, for our media buyers, and for even our brands to find those insights within large data sets faster. And so a lot of manual tasks that we all used to be working on in Excel for hours a day can be done a lot faster, and give the people that are embracing it, I think, a real edge on the competition right now. We provide solutions on automating tasks like tracking competitive movement on shelf, and making real-time budget allocation decisions on media to really fuel driving outcomes as fast as possible. And then the other thing is, like Ana mentioned, just outside of the data, a huge amount of attention on the ability for it to aid in creative. Obviously for doing things like versioning for different creatives for different audiences, but for us, some brands that we have are marketing on 40 plus different retailer owned sites, and they do not abide by any kind of standardized spec sizing. So just the production work, right, that used to go into having to turn all these assets around to fit those specs has really been super helpful to use AI to make that process go a lot faster.
Right. But when these are great examples, Lauren, and I can imagine that, a sound sort of first party data strategy at the foundation, right? It's necessary because as soon as you start turning the dial up on efficiency, on the creative you're putting out there, and automating even media budgets, right? Or using it to help make, some decisions there, you really want to make sure that foundation's right before you start turning up the dial, right? Thanks for the examples.
Yeah.
And Brian, there's so much happening in the cloud right now. I'm overwhelmed myself. We're a cloud partner and we get your newsletters and your, expertise and guidance all the time. It's incredible. I don't know how you're keeping up, but exciting you right now.
Yeah, long days. So we'll expand your inbox for you. Yeah, if you're not intellectually curious now in this space, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's basically on a weekly, definitely on a monthly basis. Us or the entire ecosystem is releasing some pretty amazing technology to really embolden and bring to life a lot of the use cases we've talked about today. I guess a couple things when I'm talking to marketing organizations through those workshops I described. Obviously, Anna touched on this around the multimodal capabilities, and what that gives you the ability to do is to bring sound, bring video, bring non-structured kind of data, bring all that together in what we call our context window. And this is where the innovation is happening rapidly. You don't have to have a large organization that knows Python, has the API access. You can actually prototype things just very quickly, just through your browser, if you will. And I think that's actually driving a lot of what we're seeing, especially in the marketing, because people can literally sit at their desk, they have an idea, they can go find the pieces and parts of the data that they want and try it and see what type of response they get back. But at the end of the day, and where a lot of this started from the beginning, is it's got to be relevant and it's got to be real and it's got to be right. the three R's there, if you will. And that's where there's a lot of technology that's really advanced, what I call the grounding. That's kind of the key word here. Between what they call RAG and, more importantly, around knowledge graphs, around kind of structured data, which is a lot of the data we've been talking about today. We mentioned Cortex earlier. The ability to take that raw data, put a meta layer on top of it, so it's actually in English and it actually makes some sense. So these systems, when you're actually going and doing a prompt, it can actually go out and use that information, to give you a good, robust response back. So it's going to come fast and furious. There's a lot more in the pipeline, if you will. So stay tuned.
Appreciate that, Brian. Thanks for the ideas there. Nick, I want to finish off with you on this topic. You've built this amazing solution in using inventory data to drive better outcomes. But are you going to advance it? Are you going to use AI to advance it? And what are you trying to, what will that do? What benefits will that add?
Yeah, thank you. Well, the last, several comments for the last 5 minutes or so actually touched on everything that we're going to do for inventory responsive marketing to make it that much more sophisticated. But just to sort of sum it all up, we use AI to introduce and to help make sense of all of the data sets. The data's too big, especially when you add in things like site analytics data. Those are huge data sets. And as you add it in as a streaming data source as well to make more rapid responses and more rapid decisions, you need something that can think faster than the human brain. Yes, we're super capable, but artificial intelligence set up the right way and trained based on what you tell it to, and with the proper prompt, as Brian mentioned, is super important. When you add in other things like call center interactions, those additionally can start to adjust the picture that your data is saying, because now you've got conversations that are occurring as opposed to just clicks and site visits and page views and purchases. And then you need to make sure that you use that data to promote the right product at the right time as well. So other areas that we are also adding in are working with structured and unstructured data sets. That's extremely difficult, and as a human, we can't do things fast enough. So we're setting up AI behind the scenes to use the data sets to connect quickly and produce the right and more accurate result. We're using also AI agents, which we didn't talk to today, and we're not going to get into it too much, but that really helps with the decisioning based on the interactions that the customers have with your brand. So if you haven't already researched at all on this topic around AI agents, consider it a large language model that can interact with another large language model, or it can take an action based on the decision. So now we're adding in the capability of having conversations and decisions made all with your input. Ultimately, that makes it into a full omni-channel approach. There's very few customer journeys that are linear, and we're seeing that with all of our clients that we're working with. So we need to be communicating with customers across all touch points with a greater experience. Last thing is really don't offer the products that you don't have. Don't let creative be the limiting factor as well. We use solutions like Vision AI and others to evaluate our clients' creatives and also to support the swift building of new versioning and new creatives. So all of that put together creates sort of a world-class solution for clients who are trying to sell anything.
Well, and very flexible, right? Because then you're thinking, you can incorporate all kinds of different data sets. It doesn't have to just be inventory, but the, and applying all of these efficiency plays, it's just mind blowing to me, Nick. It's incredible, where we're going from where we came, I think in all of our positions when we may have first started out. It's amazing. Thanks for that. And I'm excited to see where we go together with that too at Acceleration.
Definitely leaps and bounds.
Yeah, it keeps you on your toes, I think. Yeah, for all of us too. Guys, thank you all so much for your time. I thought this was lively and super informative, and I hope our audience thought the same thing. So I think we've got a little bit of time left over if we want to take some questions. Maybe I can pass it back over to Lisa to take it from here, but a huge thanks again to our audience and our panelists for the great conversation today.
Yeah, it was amazing. You guys were awesome. So thank you so much. And yes, we do have some questions. I'd love to at least get into one of them. And we have from Sam, what is the build and upkeep like of the solutions and capabilities you've described? How do you recommend marketers ensure that they stay current and continue to incorporate new data sources into their capabilities and solutions? And I think, Nick, why don't we kick that to you first?
Oh, sure, that's great. Yeah, well, first off, I think this is a given, but sometimes overlooked. Make sure you have smart people. Make sure you have the right people to really support the solutions. There's only so far that tech can really take you. But I would say, secondly, test iteratively new data sources and new components. So if you're, we're talking about sort of the more cutting edge things at the end of this conversation. You don't want to just throw data at a solution that's intended to be automated in most ways. If you have an idea, test a subset of your population with a new feature or data set first. Don't just roll it out to your entire population. Test to make sure that is performing well and it's going to perform right. And of course, lastly, and of course, it's a nod for me, is hire a technical agency like Acceleration to support you internally. But no, really importantly, it's the people is very important, and then iteratively test, take your time to see the performance and improvement. Oh, and lastly, sorry, fail quickly. So if you're changing things, fail quickly so that you learn quickly as well.
Definitely good advice. I want to throw in one more quick one for Lauren specifically. Just very quickly, what future industry disruptions do you think brands need to prepare for?
Yeah, I think that where we're starting to see a little bit of convergence again in the commerce space is sort of what has traditionally been thought of as sort of national media and awareness media. There used to be this separation, right? Which is like, oh, you're on TV and you're on a billboard, and over here you're in a search algorithm, and these things are all sort of like coming together. We're being asked for them to come together more. and more. And I think it's just really important for us to remember that from a media perspective, consumers don't know what budget it's coming from. Consumers don't know the back end of how we're sort of making the sausage. They just see it all sort of together, right, on their journey. And so I think the big flip will sort of be when media turns into being all addressable and all sort of commerce enabled, right? And so you'll be able to purchase at any moment. You'll be able to go directly to a place where you can sort of make this conversion and learn more. And so that's all coming together. And I think that we're already seeing it happening. I think it's going to happen a lot faster than maybe what we're planning for today. So I think that's probably the most exciting thing, is just having all of this data, really be able to sort of fuel the full funnel and having everything be data driven, optimizable, and ready to sell products for our clients.
Right, and we have lots of other questions, but unfortunately we can't get to them, but I know that they will get back to each of you who have a question in there and help you with that, as well as if you have any other questions that you come up with, you can reach out to Acceleration at contact@acceleration.biz, B-I-Z. So be sure to reach out if any more questions pop up. But in the meantime, thank you guys so much. You were awesome. Anna, Brian, Lauren, Nick, and Alex. You guys did such a great job. So really appreciate you doing this today.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time, everyone.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thanks to everybody.
Yes, and yes, thank you for watching another edition of MediaPost webinar series. Hope we'll see you again soon, and take care.